Welcome back to ComSci, and today we are going...
It's so weird to hear instead of physics. Sorry, go ahead.
Today, we're going to talk through topic 1.2.2, which asks us to describe the roles that a computer can take in a networked world.
Just like topic 1.2.1, it's heavy terminology and mostly definitions, but we wanted to show you a couple of different examples of things and talk about different examples of things that not technically in your notes on OEO. So anyway, let's talk about some of the roles. So first, let's talk about a dumb terminal. A dumb terminal is basically this thing right here. Now, this is inside the faculty room in Hauppauge. There you go. In the Hauppauge faculty room where the copy machine is. This is a regular computer. In this case, we'll call this regular computer a FAT client. Basically, it is a regular computer that does all the processing and everything that a regular computer does. But it's networked to this device over here, which is now what we call a dumb terminal. It does not have a computer attached to it other than that computer. So when you connect to it, you're still technically connected to that computer. And it can do all the processing that that computer does, but there's nothing here for that processing to take place. It takes place in here. Sorry, I was too close to the board. So this is a computer unto itself, and someone can be logged into this computer where someone else can be logged into this computer, but all the processing happens here. So basically it just consists of a keyboard, a monitor, and some kind of network card or some kind of cables to connect it to another computer.
So if someone were to shut down this computer here, this one will not work until you start up that computer. So there is a sign, you see all this pink post-it notes on it. It's actually a note saying, please don't shut this computer down. Because as soon as that goes down, the others are going to go down.
There are two other ones connected to it as well, three other dumb terminals. We didn't take a picture of the whole line of them, but there's a FAT client and 3 dumb terminals. So if there are 2 other people working on these dumb terminals, this person here, they shut it down, everyone gets shut down. But this person here is allowed to log off individually from those people, and those will still work because the FAT client is still working. As long as you don't shut it down, everything is fine.
All right, so the next thing that we're going to go into is some client versus server stuff. And there's a couple more definitions that we need to know. So the first one that we're kind of talking about is a client, which is the computer accessing resources that are hosted somewhere else. So one of the examples that we have here is a thin client, which is a low performance terminal, which heavily depends on the server. And what we were just talking about is that your Chromebooks are thin clients. So your Chromebooks don't store anything directly on them, but they have to be connected to some other server. They can't work without some other server. Even Google Drive and all of those features cannot work without some other server that they're accessing.
So you can, this is kind of where the argument is based, you can store some of your Google Docs offline and edit them, but they eventually have to be put back into Google Drive and saved that way, because that's where everything winds up being saved in the Chromebook. So the Chromebook, it does have low performance. It is a terminal for you to connect to some server. You can use it without Wi-Fi. It just can't do much. So in that case, we're going to say a Chromebook is a thin client. All the terminals that we have in the back of the room, which are what we call Chrome boxes, are also technically thin clients then.
The next thing that we need to define is a server, which is the other side of things, and that's what's actually hosting everything that's being accessed across the network. So the FAT client that we were talking about was acting like a server. Google is a server. You have the big server rooms in any big building, even in the high school here. We have the big server room where everything is mainly housed, and that's what is then sending things out across the network.
We're getting away from that. Like, we do have the server room in the high school, and we do have what we call the H drive, where we can store all of our handouts and all of our teaching materials in Hauppauge. So we do have a server room. So we do have technically a big server computer, which our computers, which our clients are connected to. In this case, the computer that is here, I know you can't see it, but the one that's here that you always look at in the front, that's running this board, is a client. It is not a thin client, it's a regular, it would be then what we call a fat client. But it is a client on that server. It does a lot of the processing for itself, but it requests information from the server, gets information back, and we can store information in the server.
Now it's also its own server because it has its own hard drive in there. So we can store things locally on this specific computer that if I then go across the hall into my room, it's not on that computer. So it is its own server, which brings us to this last point here that we do want to point out, is that it can be both a client and a server. So this computer right here is one example of where it's a client and a server. It just depends on what you're using it for. This bullet I would also just make sure that you're aware of is that the main difference between servers and clients, servers are sharing their resources out, and the clients don't do that. They hold on to their own resources.
But that's why a computer, like this computer over here, can be both a server and a client. It can store resources, it can share resources. But be careful with the term of the fat client and the thin client. It can't be both of those at the same time. It will be one, a thin client or a fat client, but it can't be both. Like your Chromebook can't be a fat client and a thin client at the same time.
So it has to be one type of client, but it can also be a server. And then there's just a couple more roles that the computer can have and a couple of other definitions that we do need to be aware of.
Or some of these are not technically full-on computers if you want to talk it
Right.
about it that way. Like, for example, a router. You should all be familiar with basically your wireless router in your house. It is technically a computer. Can you connect to it with a keyboard and write stuff into it? No, but it is technically a computer, and it does a whole bunch of processing. It actually is responsible for gathering data information in the network and sending that information to certain places and making sure everything is routed in the proper order. But does it behave like your regular desktop or laptop computer? Like, can you plug a monitor into it and watch what's happening? No, you can't.
Same thing with the firewalls, which are deciding what will get access to that network and what are we going to stop from getting access to that network. It's the same type of a thing. It does all that processing and it is technically a computer, but you can't plug a monitor into it to see what's happening.
The one on top there, the DNS, the Domain Name System Server, that server is responsible for assigning names to different clients and thin clients, fat clients, servers within the network and assigning them addresses and that kind of thing. We were talking about this TCP settings, Ms. Becker and I, and basically it's just a set of protocol used for managing how data is sent around the internet. I'm not really sure how much TCP stuff that you really need to know yet. When we get more into networking and how that's involved, we'll talk more specifically about TCP.
So that's pretty much it for topic 1.2.2. Make sure that you're kind of going back, looking through all of your notes, and being able to describe the roles that a computer can take. So there might be some definition type questions. It might be a situation that's given to you and you're asked, well, what type of role is that computer taking? So make sure that you're familiar with the different types and what they do.
Have a great night.